Welcome to the All Metal Mode podcast with your host, Michael Hare. Tune in every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern with co-host Gypsy Jules, and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Matt Hoffman as we talk to guests, discuss metal detectors, equipment, and everything treasure related. Feel free to join in the discussion in the chat room during the show. And please, if you like what you hear, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to hit that like button and share the link with your friends. We hope you enjoy the show. The All Metal Mode podcast starts right now.
Nocta Macro Detectors is the fastest growing manufacturer in the industry, and for good reason. Many detectorists, including Mike Hare, call us the most innovative, but we are so much more than that. We listen to and care about our customers. We also offer a wide range of detectors to fit all of your needs. Come check out all of our products today at www.noctadetectors.com. Detectors for everyone, everywhere. A lifetime.
Hey everybody, this is Mike Hare, and you're listening to the All Metal Mode podcast with tonight's host, Gypsy Jules. She is kind of back. I don't know if she's going to be able to stick around, hopefully, but she sounds horrible. Wait till you hear her, poor thing. She is still not real good, and but she is going to come on and talk about the Garrett Memorial Hunt she attended this weekend, and she's going to play it by ear then and see if she's going to stick around and see what's going on. All Metal Mode on Facebook, All Metal Mode UK, or All Metal Mode Podcast UK on Facebook as well, Nocta Macro USA. Every Monday and Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the All Metal Mode podcast. Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 8 p.m. GMT time, is All Metal Mode UK podcast. Of course, you can catch those anytime. Excuse me, I'm still having some issues, a little cough here and there, but doing better. You can catch those on Spreaker. You can download it on Spreaker. You can listen to it live, iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and some other affiliates. So plenty of places to catch up on older shows and stuff, or listen to the new ones if you get a chance. Of course, if you are listening live, jump into chat. There's always good conversation going on there, and a handful of people having a good time. And of course, if you got any questions for me, Gypsy, Dorian, you can always ask. We'll get to them. And so that's a great way to interact with us. allmetalmode.com, in the navigation, there's articles. You can click on that and find my articles there. 2019 Watts Rendezvous, 3-day golden treasure hunt, June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, Mancos, Colorado. It's $215 per person. Cutoff is April 1st. April 1st. Yep, I believe I got that right. I hope I got that right. I know it's April now. But tonight's guest is Dorian Cook, like I said, and Dorian is going to be talking about KGC. So that ought to be really interesting. I've had a few conversations with him about it, and he's, when I get on the phone with Dorian, it turns into these really long conversations because, and I don't have the time. I really don't. I've got, with the kids and everything else, so I find myself juggling the kids and doing other things because I can't get off the phone with him. His stories are so interesting. But hey, Gypsy, how's it going?
Going okay.
You sound lovely.
Yeah, I'm just now getting my voice back today. as y'all remember, last Monday I wasn't able to make it because my voice was gone, and then I started getting it back, and I thought it was all back. I just, a little bit of the sinus, whatever it is, sinus cold, sinus infection, I don't know what it is, and got up here to the Charles Garrett Memorial Hunt, and I guess it was Friday evening, or was it Saturday? I'm getting my days mixed up. It was Saturday after our silver hunt, a cold front blew in, and when that cold front blew in and the wind blowing in my ears and all that while we were out metal detecting, and boy, it just did a number on my sinuses and the drainage and stuff, and I lost my voice again. So I'm getting it back again. So I sound better than I did.
Well, that's good.
Believe it or not.
So how'd the hunt go?
It was a lot of fun. I got to see people from everywhere. There was people from Belgium there taking photos for the Garrett European photo. I think they have something on Twitter, and they took some photos of me while we were out hunting in the Relic hunt and silver hunt. And there were people from California, from Florida, a lot of people from Florida. You name it. There was a state where there was somebody represented. It's really neat to meet people from all over and see them all come together and get to hunt together. And I've personally never. Now, this is just my personal preference. I like finding stuff out in the raw. I like finding something that wasn't planted. Mm-hmm. But one good thing I can say about seeded hunts is it brings people together. You get to know detectorists from all over, and it's also really good for someone wanting to learn a detector, because you're out in a field where there's been hundreds, and in our case this weekend it was literally thousands of coins and relics planted in a field, and I helped plant a bunch of these. The very first day when I got there, Thursday, let's see, we didn't plant, I guess it was until Friday morning. I just kind of helped, I guess it was Thursday. We helped plant the relics for Friday morning's hunt, and we planted Civil War mini balls, and we planted musket balls, and we planted flat buttons and some Civil War buttons, and a lot of prize tokens. I mean, Garrett gave away tons of detectors. They gave away AT Maxes, AT Pros, Ace 400s, Ace 300s, you name it. They gave it away, pinpointers. So for the relic hunt, if you find a token, they gave away loads of different relics. A lot of it was Civil War relics that had been dug up by other detectorists, some of it non-dug, and they would place it in like a display case, and it would have the backstory on it. And it would be, if you got a token and you might have won a officer's belt buckle or a U.S. plate, or they gave away swords. I mean, these were swords that were worth $300, dollars or more. You name it, they gave it away. The prizes were just unbelievable. They had over 425 entries of people that came this year that were just involved in the hunts, and I don't know if that was including part of their spouses that came along. There was some people that just didn't metal detect. They just came along to support, their spouses or friends. And then there is an old the town of Jefferson has a lot of history, and there's an old dump there that we're allowed to dig in, and so they take a bulldozer and dig down in some of it, and you can go over there and dig in it. I dug a marble and some bottles, but some of the bottles I dug wasn't all that old. But one person did find an old poison bottle that I think was worth over $100. There was other various pieces of jewelry and things dug in the dump. Besides that, this place has so much history where they have the hunt at a RV park. There was a lot of things dug that they have a best finds hunt, and there was one guy that was hunting near the railroad track. Excuse me. He dug an old tobacco can, and when he just thought it was just an old can, and when he picked it up, he heard a clink, and so he opened it up, and then all of a sudden dumped it out, and a $5 gold piece fell out.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I got photos of that and video. So just for all of you that weren't able to make it to the Charles Garrett Memorial Hunt, this was the third annual one. It's been three years since Charles Garrett passed away, and this is to memorialize, him and the wonderful things that he, brought about through technology and for us in the metal detecting world. And but anyway, what was I getting at? I did video while I was there, so I will have a video coming out very soon. So y'all be sure and check out my YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber yet, just pop on over to YouTube. And remember, my YouTube channel is Zero Discrimination. And just check out my video. Will be coming out soon, the Charles Garrett Memorial Hunt. One of my highlights of the hunt, actually, is I got to fire a cannon to start us off on Saturday morning.
Right.
That was something I've never done, so that was fun. Boy, my ear was ringing too after that. So we got that on video too, and that was an experience. And I did. After everybody had left, we went and kind of hit a spot that we had roped off on our big field that we planted all this stuff in. There was supposedly an old homestead up on the hill. We only got to hunt in about 30 minutes, and then I had to head on back. Besides, I was starting to feel really bad and worn out. I did dig an old spoon, but that was about it. But it was so much fun.
I bet.
It was a blast.
That's awesome.
Gypsy, I guess Garrett really established a reputation for the big hunts. I was in charge of the first international championship treasure hunt that Charles Garrett put on in 1979, and we had 1,200 hunters and gave away 500 deep secret metal detectors.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And
they set the bar for all that,
and
don't they?
In the competition hunt, we gave away a brand new Chevy 4-wheel drive pickup.
What? Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I tell you what I'm going to do. Of course, that was before digital cameras. So I'm going to take screenshots of the photos I have of that hunt, and I'll see that we'll put those on flash drive for you and see that you get a set, because I think you'd enjoy seeing 1,200.
Wonderful. I would love to show some of that.
We have a good shot of 50 or the 1,200 hunters around the field, and that is an awesome sight. We had planted 104 in that one field, Gypsy. We planted 140,000 coins and tokens, prize tokens, and they vacuumed it in 10 minutes.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Oh man!
Gave away a new Chevy truck. How'd that come about?
Well, that was my brainstorm, Mike. I've told you I'm kind of an innovator type person, and it had never been done. It had never been done in the entire history of organized treasure hunts. So we wanted to make this the biggest, the best, and we wanted to blaze new trails. Charles Garrett was, completely in agreement, and he gave me a long leash to work on that hunt, and backed me up with everything I asked for, and we had a Civil War battle reenactment, and we held it at the fourth largest flea market in the United States, called Traders Village, out between Fort Worth and Dallas. And we actually used private airports fields for our hunt fields.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, and it was interesting because everybody who competition hunted for years knew that the absolute best guy for that in the whole United States was a really, really neat guy named Jesse Blackshire from Memphis, Tennessee. And sure enough, Jesse won the pickup. So I was really happy. And he was still driving that truck 30 years later.
Really?
Oh my goodness.
That's funny.
Great memories, great memories. And, I'll always be grateful that not only did I get to work for Charles Garrett, but I got to go hunt Spanish treasure with him. And that was a blast.
Oh,
we'll talk about that sometime. Yeah. Okay.
Gypsy, did you have anything else to add?
Just that, let's see, we had Tim and King George there, Tim Ringmaster and KG there that used to be on Diggers, that they now have, I think today, their brand new episode, or it was yesterday, their brand new episode on diggingtv.com came out, or you can also find it on YouTube, and that's anacondatreasure.com. I think their brand new season came out. So y'all be sure and check that out. And they were there, got to dig with them. I got to dig with Nugget Noggin was there. We had, who else? We had Jocelyn from Relic Recovers that was there, and her boyfriend. And we had Carlotta there. And who else? I guess that's about it.
Nugget Brain.
It was a lot of fun, though, digging with them and getting to know them better. And most all of us videoed and took photos while we were there, so be sure and check out their channels as well.
Good deal.
I think that's about it, unless anybody has any questions. Oh, and I got to see Wayne Peterson there, and his son, Austin.
Oh, that's
cool. Nugget Brain Wayne.
Good times, good times.
It was a blast, yeah.
One of these years I'll try to make it. We'll see.
I'll drag you there one of these years.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try really hard to go to the Texas Treasure Show next month, though. Hopefully I'll see you there. I believe you're going.
I think so, yep.
Okay, good deal. You sound
great.
You sound wonderful. Poor thing. Okay, let's get into, I am excited to hear about KGC Gold.
Okay, you ready for me?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready if Gypsy's ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, yeah, let's.
Okay.
I didn't even write down any questions tonight. I just let you go. You do your thing,
right.
And I'm sure questions will come up as we go. And
yeah, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. All right, there's a lot to understanding the subject of the KGC or the Knights of the Golden Circle. There's been a lot of misinformation circulated, and everybody has kind of a hodgepodge impression of what it's all about. All they know is it's supposedly a bunch of people who hid some fabulous treasures, and that people want to go, of course, look for them and dig them up and all of that. I want to try to really give an overview of what the Knights of the Golden Circle were, what they were attempting to do, and little-known factors. I have information that I'm not sure that very many, maybe 2 or 3 other KGC researchers in the whole country have. And I want to share some of that with everybody. But I kind of got to prepare you for this information.
Mm-hmm.
The American public has been fed a lot of history that is not true. Many historical figures that we've heard and read about and watched movies about who were supposedly killed at various times, in their outlaw activities or whatever, Jesse James being one of them, survived their so-called death and lived for many years after that. And that is a part of the Golden Circle story. So I'm going to be revealing some things about Jesse James and Frank James that very few people know, and you're going to find them hard to believe. So I will challenge your listeners, before you dismiss and say, oh, that can't be the case, I read a book on that or this, that, the other thing. There's an awful lot of books out there about Jesse James that aren't worth the price of the cover on the book, much less the whole book, because they're so inaccurate. And the truth is not found by the casual researcher. The truth is found by the dedicated history detective who follows clues, who is ruthless and relentless. They're going to know, they're going to find out. My file on the KGC is about 4 inches thick. And I have letters from people who were related to members of the KGC. I have people who wrote me letters and said, I am in the KGC and this type of thing. Some of them have tried to deliberately mislead me, and others have tried to really help me and further my education. So I want to share with you, the summary of what I have learned over what has been a research project that started in 1978.
Nice.
All right, we're going to start with the story of Jesse James. Actually, he will come in just a moment or two. We're going to start with a man called William Clark Quantrill. Any of you who know a little Civil War history will know that he was a famous guerrilla leader that really gave the Yankees a bad time in Missouri, northern Arkansas, out in Kansas, west or eastern Kansas. And he's been portrayed in history as simply kind of a bloodthirsty, no-holds-barred soldier that fought under the black flag, which means no quarter. And they don't understand and they don't know the story of how William Clark Quantrill came to be a leader of a guerrilla band. He's famous for looting and burning Lawrence, Kansas, and supposedly killing all the citizens, which he did not do. He did shoot all of the men. All the men that they could find in Lawrence, Kansas, were indeed executed. The women and children were not. They were spared. And the reason why that was done is because it was the headquarters for a notorious U.S. Senator named Jim Lane, who was the leader of a band of actually renegade soldiers that wore the uniforms of the Federal Army with a red stripe down their legs, and they were called Redlegs. And they, before, just in the years prior to the Civil War, began intimidating people who were leaning towards supporting the South that they knew of. And they burned their homes, they hung them, they tortured them, they murdered them. They did all kinds of terrible things. Well, it turned out that Quantrill was young. He was just about 20 years old, a little less, maybe 19, 18, right in there. And his older brother decided to go to California to hunt gold because the gold rush was going on out there. So William Clark Quantrill decided to join him. So they set out from Missouri, their home in Missouri, they set out for California. They were going to stay completely out of the war. And then a terrible thing happened. As they were camped on their first night out, a group of men appeared in the middle of the night around their camp, and these were the dreaded Redlegs. And when they were done, William Clark Quantrill was shot and left for dying, and his brother had been murdered. And that's what gave birth to the famous guerrilla leader. He survived. He was found, nursed back to health, and he had a white-hot burning hatred for the North because of what these renegade federal soldiers, I say renegade in the sense they were operating outside, military law. They were basically criminals in uniforms.
Wow.
So he raised a force to oppose them. Frank James joined up with him. Frank was older than Jesse. And Frank, by the way, was a degreed doctor. And pretty soon, Jesse wanted to join up too. He was 17 years old. He had a baby face. They said that, if he put on a scarf, he looked like a woman. But he had a natural, people said he was born to the gun, just a natural talent with a pistol. And here's where, folks, I'm going to drop a bombshell. You all have heard for many, many years about Jesse and Frank James. The truth about Jesse and Frank James is there were two Frank and Jesse James. I've written about them in my book on one of my books on Kentucky, the history in the early years. And there was a Missouri Frank and Jesse, which, Missouri is supposedly where Jesse lived, and his family, and his mother was supposed to be a woman named Zarella Samuels. And I guess Jesse's father was supposed to have died, and she had remarried a Dr. Samuels. But actually, there was another set of Jameses over in Kentucky, Frank and Jesse, living in a big 2-story stone house near Frankfort, Kentucky on the Versailles Pike. And they were cousins with the Jesse and Frank in Missouri. The Jesse James in Missouri even had a nickname of Dingus. They called him Dingus James. The family did. So what has happened is that history has taken these two sets of James brothers and they have blended them into one set, made a composite set of James brothers. The real Frank and Jesse James, the ones that have done so many things you've heard about, were not from Missouri. They were from Kentucky. Their father was Captain George James, and their mother was Molly Dalton. And that's how the Jameses tied into the Daltons. So Jesse joined up with Quantrill and became a deadly fighter.
Hold on. Which James? Okay, just to make sure we got it clear.
All right.
Which ones joined? I forgot his name. I'm horrible with names. Joined the guerillas. Was it Frank and Jesse out of Kentucky, or are we talking about the ones out of Missouri?
And you're right, and that's a very good point, Mike. Thanks for making me clarify that. The Frank and Jesse that fought with Quantrill were from Kentucky. The Missouri Frank and Jesse, the information I have, which I'm not sure is 100% accurate, was that Dingus James rode with Quantrill for a while, but I think that Frank joined the regular Confederate Army, and I think Dingus did also after a while.
Okay. So the Missouri
force. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I got it.
Okay. All right. Now, one other thing about Frank in Kentucky that I find fascinating. Remember, I said that their father was Captain George James. Well,
right.
In the history books, we're told that the Civil War started with the Confederates firing on Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Well, we know for a fact that the Confederate officer who gave the command for the first cannon to fire at Fort Sumter, that is the official opening of the Civil War, was Captain George James. We don't know if that's Jesse's father, but we're about 75, 80% sure that it is at this point.
That's fascinating. Hey,
Isn't it, though?
Dorian, just real quick,
Sure.
I want to say, to cut down on noises and stuff, I keep muting. So if I don't, I'm listening very intently. So if you're waiting on me for a response, give me a second to get off of mute. I'm just giving you the floor, and I am listening. But if I need to pop in, I'll pop in.
I'm on mute.
Yeah, same here. I think cut down on background noise and stuff. We are giving you the floor, but I am listening. I am tuned in. You've got my 100% attention. Okay.
Okay. There is so much information. Even if you gave me 5 hours, I could only give you an overview. So I'm going to try not to get bogged down in too much detail, but I'm going to try to help expand your reader's sense of history, of what really happened and why certain things happened, because they've been lied to. There's an old expression which is so true, is that the victors write the history. And what Jesse James and Frank would do, among others, when they became part of this organization we're going to be talking about the KGC, was they did things that the federal government still holds classified to this day, does not want the public to know about. And we're going to be talking about some of those things.
Hey, real quick, Dorian, we can just keep in mind we can always do a part 2. So
okay.
you know, don't feel rushed. We can do a part 3 if necessary. If you've got information that you think's relevant that you want to get out, don't feel rushed. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Well, what I want to set straight, this record, that the idea that William Clark Quantrill was nothing but a cutthroat guerrilla. He was like these Redlegs, only wearing, a gray uniform. That's not correct. The man was brilliant. The young man was brilliant, and he took to leadership like Jesse took to a pistol. And he never had more at any time during the war than 279 men, and most of the time he had about 50 or 60. And yet Quantrill's men accounted for 5,000 federal soldiers being killed during the war. And the way they did this was they were like no other. They were a cavalry unit. Now, they were irregulars, or guerillas, yes. They were not under the command, like a General Lee or somebody like that. They were pretty much, they were also called up in Virginia, the Gray Ghost, Mosby. Mosby was the same type. He had the same type of an operation. Anyway, Quantrill designed special holsters for his men that would hold 6 pistols. And Quantrill's cavalry, as it was, were pistol fighters. They might have a carbine in the holster in the saddle, but it was rarely used. To give you an example, what they would do when they attacked you and they got up close and personal, they rode right up to you, stuck a pistol in your face, and pulled the trigger if you were a Yankee soldier. That's why they were able to account for so many casualties. They could fire 36 shots without reloading. So, like I said, amazing. That's why the lopsided casualty toll, in terms of how many Federals they actually killed. And that group kept over 100,000 Federal soldiers busy trying to catch them. But to show you how effective they were, during the middle of the war, a new Union colonel was given command of a regiment in, I forget the town of Missouri there, but it was in the area where Quantrill made his raids and things. And he bragged to the locals that he was going to be the man who got Quantrill. And even the people who sympathized with the South told him, you can't do it. You don't have enough men. You've only got 350. His unit was part infantry, part cavalry, at 350 cavalry. So, of course, he didn't accept that advice at all. And he got on Quantrill's trail with his unit and tracked him for 2 weeks. And finally, they got just a little bit out of Centralia, Missouri. I'm not sure exactly now from memory which side of Centralia, but they weren't far from Centralia. And Quantrill's men came out of the woods, and there was a big sweeping wheat field that went uphill gradually and to a little ridge top, and the wheat was about knee high. And so they crossed the wheat field and were just getting to the ridge top when this Federal colonel and his men came out of the woods behind them. And according to Captain Harrison Trow, who was one of Quantrill's most trusted captains, in his memoirs, Trow says that all Quantrill did was say, halt, about face, charge. And the whole unit turned, and this was right at the time when they had the 279 men, their maximum. These 279 riders charged down that hill, and they were probably a half a mile from the Federal officers when they started the charge. And the colonel made the last mistake of his life. He dismounted his men and formed a battle line to take the charge. And Quantrill's men thundered into them, and in less than 10 minutes, 339 federal soldiers lay dead. 11 were wounded and had run into the woods trying to escape. They were all 11 tracked down. 10 of them were shot and killed, and one with a minor wound was allowed to stay alive and go back and tell everybody what happened.
Wow.
Quantrill's losses were 4 killed, 6 wounded. So you see the story behind the story. A researcher can find the fact that Quantrill was supposed to have killed 5,000, but that doesn't tell you why. Stories like this tell you why he was able to do that.
Right.
So, a case might be made that Quantrill's men were arguably the best cavalry the world's ever seen, most effective. Okay, now, that's the background. That's how Jesse cut his teeth and grew into adulthood. In fact, during that particular battle I just gave you, Harrison Trow says that he personally saw Jesse James ride up and stick a pistol in the face of the colonel and kill him.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm going to jump ahead just to tie something in here. When Jesse was, he was almost 100 years old. And I'll get into how he survived his so-called death in a little while. But let's, for talking purposes, say that he did. And he is walking along in Gladewater, Texas, the sidewalk in town, with his great-grandson, whom I'm going to bring into this shortly, plays a major part, who was a private detective, and he was in his late 40s at the time. And they were walking, and he turned to his famous grandfather, and he said, "Grandpa, how many men do you think you killed in your lifetime?" And the old man had striking blue eyes, and he just looked at him real intently. And he thought a minute, and he looked around, and he said, "You see that big barn up there on the hill?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I reckon they'd fill that barn." And his grandson was amazed. He said, "Well, Grandpa, that barn would probably hold 2,000 bodies. And the old man looked at him. He says, "Yep." He says, "I think that's about right." And then he said, fire came into the old man's eyes, and he looked at his grandson, and he said, "But I never killed nobody that didn't need killing." One of my favorite stories.
That is a neat story.
Okay, so now we're going to come out of the Civil War. The South is lost, and everybody thinks that basically that was it. Turn out the lights, the party's over. But the Knights of the Golden Circle is a story of the Confederate resistance movement and its efforts to plan for and start a second Civil War. Now, this is a diabolical thing because there was a hidden group that was actually manipulating the KGC for purposes unknown to all of these Southern men who thought they were going to start another war and this time whip the Yankees. So let me get into a little bit of official background about the Knights of the Golden Circle. They came into existence, at least to where they could be seen publicly, in the area of Cincinnati, Ohio, in the 1850s, probably a little closer to the middle than either end. And they were supposedly started by a man named George, and he actually had a title of doctor. I'm not sure if that was a PhD or an MD. I'm not, that I haven't been able to find out. But his name was George W.L. Bickley. And supposedly this organization was officially founded in 1854 there in Cincinnati. Go ahead.
Real quick, we got a question from the chat, and just keep this in mind. If you want to keep going, we can tie it in later.
Okay.
Want me to ask about the Copperheads and how they fit into KGC?
And that's a very, very good, intelligent question. And actually, I would have gotten to it just in about another minute here.
Okay, perfect.
Let me Yeah. I will answer your listener's question here just very shortly. They organized this group and other units of the Golden Circle, the KGC. And by the way, this was a organization of men who were Scottish Rite Masons. I was told later that the Civil War was primarily fought between Scottish Rite Masons of the South and the Oriental Rite Masons of the North. And since it was a very high-ranking Scottish Rite Mason that was telling me that, I'm actually, prone to give a little bit of credibility, at least to suspect that they had a lot of influence, that there was definitely a feud among the Masons involved in the Civil War. Anyway, Beckley opens up this society of Southern sympathizers and supporters of Southern rights in Cincinnati, and other units cropped up in Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Ohio, Missouri, Kentucky, Michigan, and Western Pennsylvania really pretty quickly. And there were some aliases for the Knights of the Golden Circle, such as the Circle of Honor, the Knights of the Mighty Host, and the Corps de Belgique was another one. And they had kind of a military branch they called the American Legion, which is not the same, of course, American Legion that has existed in our time. And what they wanted to do was set up a great southern slave empire surrounding the Gulf of Mexico, including Cuba. And they were going to divide this up into sections. And each of these groups was called a castle. And each leader of the group, in order to rule over one of these sections of the new empire they were going to build, had to build his own castle. And if any of you have traveled out to California by chance and you have visited Death Valley Scotty's castle, you have seen one of the Knights of the Golden Circle castles, because Death Valley Scotty was a member. Now, right now, remember, we're still pre-Civil War here, okay? We're talking 1850s. Now, the organization that Beckley started kind of passed into the hands of a man named Clement Vallandigham. I want to say Vallandigham, but it's not. There's not an N in the dig. It's Vallandigham, so it's pronounced Vallandigham. He became the supreme commander, and out of this involved the 5 secret Confederate organizations. One of these, of course, the Knights of the Golden Circle was the number 1. Number 2 was the Knights of the White Camellia. Number 3 was the Sons of Liberty. Number 4 was the American Anti-Horse Thief Society. And then right at the end, of course, the Civil War, the original Ku Klux Klan. Now, we were taught that it was Ku Klux Klan, and that is not correct. The original organization was the 2 words, Ku Klux, which is the Greek word for circle, and Klan. So Circle Klan is what it meant. It was founded by the great Confederate cavalry leader Nathan Bedford Forrest. And supposedly, since the victors write to history, the Northerners wrote that this organization was formed to, persecute black people and other minorities, especially those black soldiers who'd fought for the North and this type of thing. And actually, the original Ku Klux Klan was not formed for that purpose at all. It was a part of history that's not politically correct was the fact, and this is a verifiable fact, that 64,000 blacks fought for the South, wore gray, and fought for the South. If you don't believe it, do a little research on Terry's Texas Rangers. They were a Confederate unit of cavalry that fought in the war, and you will find they were made up of whites, blacks, and Mexicans, and they worked together exceptionally well. So what Bedford Forrest saw was that with the carpetbaggers moving in to basically rape the South at the end of the Civil War under this, misnomer of a plan called Reconstruction that still has many people in the South, descendants, generations later, still full of resentment over what was done to the South. It was so bad. But Forrest knew that these soldiers who had fought for the South, these 65,000, were going to be really persecuted because most of them, when the interviews I've read of them, when they were asked, why did you fight for, on the side of slavery, they got very indignant. They said, I didn't fight for slavery. This plantation is my home. This is where I grew up. I was fighting to defend my home. I read a letter that one black slave wrote home to his parents on the plantation. And it said, Dear Mom and Dad. I saw it in his own handwriting. It said, Dear Mom and Dad, we had a great time killing Yankees today. So you see, the whole story is not told when the victors write the history. Unless you hear it from both sides, you're only going to get part of the truth. Anyway, Bedford Forrest saw that your poor Confederate soldiers, those who'd been crippled by their wounds, and there were many thousands, were going to need assistance and help. And that included the black Confederate soldiers, ex-soldiers. So he formed the Ku Klux Klan for that purpose. It was a fraternal military assistance order, and it was infiltrated by people from the North, agents, and people who began to raise up supposed branches of the Ku Klux Klan, and they completely turned it around and turned it into the organization that we grew up knowing was an organization that was of a bunch of racists and bigots and this type of thing. If you will check your history carefully, you will find that Nathan Bedford Forrest himself, when he saw what was happening, he ordered all the lodges to disband, and those that were still loyal to the South disbanded. And what you had left was not the Ku Klux Klan. It was gone. It was not there anymore. You now had the Ku Klux Klan. Now, I'm telling you these things to show you.
That is crazy.
I'm telling you these things to show you, you see patterns of how people who want to push a hidden agenda, this is how they work.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Okay. So this was the kind of thing that was going on in the South. So now you know the 5 secret organizations, and I will, try to give you a little bit of proof of what I'm about to say as we go through this. But I know for a fact that the KGC still exists to this very day. I do not know if the Knights of the White Camellia does still exist or not at this time. The American Anti-Horse Thief Society does still exist. Of course, the Ku Klux Klan does not, but the Sons of Liberty also still exist. So 3 out of the 5 are still in existence. And, it's already, let's face it, guys, those of you listening that are Masons, you already know that the Masons have a lot of secrets and have a secretive nature and don't tell the public, everything that they do or that they're about. Now, I'm not condemning one way or the other. I'm just stating that is the way it is. So these men were already used to keeping secrets. So it was a natural for the ex-Confederate soldiers that became the military arm of the KGC after the Civil War, the ones who fought the resistance movement that we're going to be talking about. It was natural for them to keep secrets. So they had 7 or 8 secret codes that they communicated in. They had secret meeting places. One of the meeting places of the Golden Circle, this might really surprise you. I told you I was going to reveal secrets. A lot of you maybe have at one point or another visited the Grand Ole Opry, the original building in the Ryman Auditorium in Memphis, is it? Nashville.
I've been there.
All right. Okay, Gypsy, guess what? when you were there, you were so close. You were so close to a Golden Circle secret.
Really?
Underneath the Ryman Auditorium are secret tunnels that led out that a man could ride a horse into.
Oh, wow.
And this is how the KGC would hold meetings without anybody knowing.
Wow. I believe it, because you know that when you get in there, the seats go up so high. There's got to be so much room under there because of the way it's made and everything. I think I got to see Minnie Pearl when I was there.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, I mean, that's fascinating. Oh, that's so fascinating.
Yes. And for you Texas folks that are there that are listening in, the old Sanger building in downtown Dallas was where the KGC met in the basement in secret. And if you were to go back and go through the archives of the Dallas Morning News in the papers, you would find they've had a real problem with tunnels. Suddenly, the streets collapsing into underground tunnels. And when this happens, Dallas, the city of Dallas, usually rushes concrete trucks to the site, and they just keep pouring concrete down until it forms a plug. And no investigation is done, no archaeological work, nothing. So, are we still there?
You are still here. We are listening contently.
I got you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought the call had dropped on my end.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you're starting to see that these guys really, were locked into secrets, secret meetings, secret codes, this type of thing. And there was a reason why, and I will get into it in just a second. I need to back up and tell you something I didn't. This military arm of the KGC, which is what I have followed. I have not deeply researched the other aspects of the KGC, what they did after the Civil War. But the copperheads that your listener was wondering about, yes, most of the time the copperheads were either outright KGC or else were very closely associated to one of the other secret organizations like the American Anti-Horse Thief Society. Mike, there's a historical marker besides a little park on US 23 in Ohio. I saw it one time several years ago, and it talks about the American Anti-Horse Thief Society right on that historical marker.
Oh, wow.
And to the intrepid researcher, you dig into the files of every state, you're going to find references to the Knights of the Golden Circle and their activities. You could fill an encyclopedia with the information that you can dig out. All right, so the military arm of the KGC, what we're going to be talking about, was composed of two circles: the inner circle and the outer circle. The inner circle was the ruling board of directors, you might call them. There was 12. The outer circle was made up of ex-Confederate soldiers, and my understanding is that they averaged around 2,000, but more ex-Confederate soldiers could be called in for projects if they were needed. Now, the whole purpose of the military arm was to secure funds to fight a second Civil War, because they recognized the Civil War was beaten not so much on the battlefield, it was beaten by attrition. The really outstanding Southern cavalry got to the point they couldn't replace their horses, and so they ended up fighting on foot. They dismounted the infantry. So the cavalry kept reducing and reducing, and the Yankee cavalry kept getting bigger and bigger. And they could not make enough guns, enough cannons, enough ammunition, because they were running out of money. So plans were made to prepare the financing for the entire war in advance. Now, this is where Jesse James comes in. Official history tells you that the James gang robbed trains and banks, right? Okay. Yep. We all know they did. Mm-hmm. That much is true. That much is true. See, the thing about something that's true, if you leave out enough details, it becomes a lie rather than the truth, even though you're technically correct. You're leading your audience down the garden path, so to speak. What Jesse and his men were doing, they were all, these Scottish Rite Masons, they were members of the Knights of the Golden Circle. And they were indeed robbing trains and banks, but they were robbing trains and banks that were either insured by the Northern bankers or were owned outright by the Northern bankers. So they were dealing a blow. They saw themselves as fighting a resistance movement. Oh, they were even smarter than that. By the way, once the Golden Circle or Inner Circle had formed, the president of the board of directors of this, as I'm calling them, that's not what they called themselves, but the Inner Circle, the president, the leader, was none other than William Clark Quantrill. And Jesse James was the treasurer of the organization.
Wow. Okay.
Quantrill would serve in that position under the alias of DeWitt Travis until 1895, if I remember correctly. At his natural death, he was replaced as the president, or whatever they call the leader, by none other than Jesse James. And Jesse James was the head of the Golden Circle until his death at the age of 104 in 1951 in Granbury, Texas. Now, I'm not asking any of you to believe me right now just because I say it. I'm asking you to keep an open mind throughout the rest of our presentation here, because I'm going to give you some really compelling evidence that Jesse James did live to be 104 and did die in Granbury, Texas, that he faked his death.
Wow, Granbury's just up the road from me.
Yes, it is. Guess what?
What's that?
Wow.
Jesse's buried in the cemetery there, Mike. You can go see his grave.
Wow.
Really?
The tombstone. Yeah, it's the only tombstone in the whole cemetery that has a Confederate flag on it, and it says Jesse Woodson James right on the tombstone.
Wow, I'll have to go see that.
There are plenty of detractors that will tell you, oh, that's not the real Jesse James, and he's not buried there, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that, while we're on the story. And if nothing else, maybe I can kind of pique your curiosity to investigate a little further. Because the things that I'm telling you, I believe that you can research out on your own if you want to, if you're motivated enough to do it. I was motivated. And I'm going to tell you how I became motivated on the Golden Circle. When I was working for Charles Garrett, one day an older man showed up. It turned out at the time he was about my age right now. He was 70, 71. And he didn't have a wrinkle in his face, smooth lines. He looked much younger. He had absolutely snow white hair, cut short. But, he just looked like he had radiant health. He really did. And Charles Garrett introduced me to him. And this was a man that went by the name of Jesse Lee James III. And there are KGC researchers that'll start hollering, no, that's Lee Howe. That's not Jesse James III. Well, yes, he was adopted by the Howe family, but in his later years, he spent a lot of time with his famous grandfather. And when Charles introduced him to me, we had a conversation. Charles had something to do, and so I ended up getting to talk to him, and we just instantly liked each other. There I was, a young man, and Jesse decided to take me under his wing and teach me the real history of the Civil War. And I was invited to come to Porterville, California, where he lived, and he would open all of the James family records to me, the photo albums, the documents, everything they had.
Wow.
And they They had boxes full. And I took him up on that offer. And if you want to know why I'm so convicted that I'm telling you the truth tonight, it's because of what I saw.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Jesse Lee had twin sons.
Ah.
And the pictures she showed me, those boys, you can take a picture of Jesse James in the 1870s, about the time he was supposed to have been killed by Bob Ford. And by the way, Bob Ford had been a jockey. He was a small man, been a very good horse racing jockey. And he was a member of the Outer Circle of the Knights of Golden Circle. He was one of Jesse's most trusted men. And he did not kill Jesse James. He did not shoot him. We'll get to the story of how Jesse faked his death. And it is very, very interesting. And there is a lot of evidence to prove it.
I can't wait.
Remember,
to hear that.
these guys were not the dullest knives in the drawer, Gypsy. You know, these guys were sharp. They could think. They could plan.
They were extremely intelligent.
Absolutely. By the way, Nathan Bedford Forrest, I mentioned, was one of the 12 members of the Inner Circle. Jefferson Davis was one of the 12 members of the Inner Circle. Jefferson Davis was not captured like history said. His double was captured. Jefferson Davis escaped from the Deep South to Canton, Texas. You guys have heard of Canton, Texas. You ever been?
Right now.
You ever been to First Monday there, Gypsy?
Oh yes, I used to set up my metal detecting. I'd bring a bunch of my metal detectors and metal detecting funds and set up a booth there in trade days. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to tell you something about Canton, Gypsy, that's going to just set you on fire.
Okay.
Right after the Civil War, and I was told by Jesse that any city named Canton has great significance to the Golden Circle.
Huh.
I think if I got my figures right, I think it was 6,000 federal cavalry came in and attacked Canton and drove out the 3,000 Golden Circle, or, not Golden Circle so much, but Southern resistance people that were helping the Golden Circle. They actually had a running street fight, Gypsy, all the way through Canton.
Really?
Right after the Civil War.
Oh
yep.
Whoa.
Yep.
It'd be metal detecting in Canton, Mike.
Right.
I never got to, but I wanted to find some areas around, anywhere on either side of the town. If there's areas that have been pasture or something that they never built anything on, I think you're going to find, because there'll still be Civil War era bullets.
Wow.
And I think that would be fantastic, Gypsy. It's a lost battlefield. You could be the first one to find it.
Oh, man.
Now,
Mike, we got some studying to do.
Right.
If that doesn't set you guys...
where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I'm at my parents' house.
All right. Now, I'm going to give you your first KGC treasure lead in Canton.
Okay.
In the cemetery there, next to where they have First Monday, as I recall, it's very close. There's a tombstone. It's toward the. Let me get my direction straight. It's toward Dallas, so that would be west, right? Right. Dallas is west. Canton. You'll find a tombstone where the man, if you look at the dates of his birth and death, he was actually born, or he actually died before he was born. It looks like an unintentional mistake on the part of the engraver. It's not. That is the starting point for a Golden Circle treasure. That's the first marker. Yes, ma'am.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
The Golden Circle would go on to put away 3,000 caches of treasure, 8 of them so big it staggers your mind. But I don't want to. I'm getting too far ahead. I don't want to go too much down that road right now. Like you said, Mike, we might have to do a part 2 if everybody's interested.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because I've got enough information easily for 2 parts, and
absolutely.
I hope we'll get plenty of input from your listeners. as to whether or not that they want us to go that direction.
I can guarantee they do. I mean, I think I've touched on a little bit, Dorian, but I have had so many people email me, message me, contact me through Facebook that absolutely love you doing the show. So that's not an issue. We love it. Everybody, it's only been positive. So yeah, please keep going, and we'll make it a 2-part, 3-part, whatever you want. And so you keep right on going.
We'll do. By the way, I'm really pleased to announce that in our Facebook group, the We Dig the Civil War headquarters,
mm-hmm.
we got a new member today.
Oh, nice.
A fellow named Keith Will.
Oh, good deal.
Keith Will. Yeah.
Okay.
You know how the site works. I made him our first brigadier general.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Hey, everybody listening. I know I've been saying it the last couple of weeks. You hear this guy talk. He's posting stories and a lot of like how-to and helpful stuff. Seriously, it is by far my favorite Facebook group. I love some of the Facebook groups. Ohio Relic hunting is one of my favorites. Dirt Pirates. I love going there. I love reading what people are doing. But Dorian single-handedly has been adding all these articles and all this information and help, and it's getting other people to do the same. So I am telling you, if you're interested in what we're talking about tonight and Civil War metal detecting, and it doesn't have to be just Civil War, join the group. I'm telling you, it's amazing. Go ahead, Dorian.
And by the way, Mike, if they would just message me and with the words all metal mode, so I would know where they got the lead,
mm-hmm.
Then we'll go ahead and let them in right away.
Good deal. Yeah, absolutely. Let Dorian know, and I'm telling you, you're not going to find a more informative group, full of knowledge. It's still a small group. Dorian doesn't want it to get too big, but I'm starting to see some other very knowledgeable people posting stuff, and that's great. And there's some good questions being asked, and I love it. It's a very, one thing you don't get out of social media and Facebook are these informative, it's like, here's what I found today. Here's, you don't find a lot of informative posts. It's quick. Everybody gets on Facebook for a few minutes and they read something or they're looking at pictures. If you want some information, if you want to see some really cool stuff and hear some great stories and get some information, join the group. I'm telling you, it's really good.
Yeah, I appreciate the pitch there, Mike. And I just wanted to say I'm so proud of so many of our members already. We have, as of a while ago, we were up to, I think, 84 members. And I'm shooting for about 200, I think, before we start slowing down on accepting members. I don't want it to be so many. I don't want to have 15,000 people, and not be able to interact. I want to interact with the troops, as I call them. And I'm so proud of some of the guys because I'm seeing they were like you were saying. They would say, this is what I found today. And now they're giving details. They're giving tips. They're starting to share things, and I'm hoping that it's because I'm trying to set a good example for them. And I'm hoping they're following that example because, man, that's to me, that's a legacy that I would be proud of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. I will post more. I've been really busy. There has been some things I've wanted to do. I just finding the time, but definitely will be more active myself. I can tell you I go to it every day, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, and at least do that. Yeah, Barb, his Facebook group is We Dig the Civil War
headquarters.
Headquarters.
Right.
Let me look real quick because when it was brand new, it was hard to find. You actually had to search under groups. What's that?
Yeah, I put quotation marks on We Dig the Civil War, And so when people were typing that in, they weren't getting it because of the quotation marks. Just an error on my part. I'm still kind of new to manipulating social media, as far as the graphics and things. So my apologies.
No problem. So yeah, Barb, check it out. It is absolutely a fantastic group. I've never seen another group like it share so many stories and articles and stuff that he's written over the years. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's We Dig the Civil War headquarters. Thank you, Barb. Barb just posted it. If anybody's listening, if you're not in chat or something, just let us know and we can send. Actually, I think I've shared it before.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and I'll share it again. I'll share it on my timeline and All Metal Mode group, so we make sure we get the word out. But fantastic group, absolutely fantastic.
We've taken kind of a cue from the military structure here, the Golden Circle. We have kind of set this up since it's a Civil War relic centered site, and we're dealing with two different armies and things. We've kind of set it up with like a military organization, and we award honorary officer titles and things to members that participate in outstanding ways, that do outstanding posts, that are there giving likes to the other members that do to encourage them. All those things I'm trying to take into note, and so we try to let people know, you're worthy of recognition. You're doing something that's really good. You're giving, you're helping, and that is highly valued on this group. Maybe not so much on another group. I don't know. I don't condemn anybody else. I'm not competing with any other group. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to make, basically something new so that those of us that have a passion for metal detecting and relic hunting can exercise that passion and really build one another up and become better hunters. I've already learned so much from my troops, as I call them. I've learned some really great tips. I've learned from you. In fact, I'm determined, Mike, to go out with you somehow and get a field hunting class from you directly.
Absolutely. I'm going to write an article on it soon. I'm going to write a detailed article. Seeing that post in your Facebook group, I want to go in detail with pictures and stuff like that, and it's actually something I haven't done. So yeah, I'll do that soon. But yeah, that is my goal. I hope this year you and I get a chance to metal detect together. Another thing we haven't even mentioned about your group, not a single time, I don't think, is all the great pictures of your finds over the years. But there's also something else I'm seeing in the group is a lot of other Civil War hunters are starting to post their finds, and there are some incredible finds. My favorite, I believe I found it, but I want to verify it, is the 3-ringer that you think that shot a bullet. Or yes. 3-ringer that you think shot a button. Is that yours?
Yeah. Yes, and we'll digress just a moment here because this story is so good. I was in Gettysburg touring the battlefield,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't have any leads. I didn't have any permissions on any place to metal detect. But I thought, man, I can't go home without at least some real artifact souvenirs from battle. So I went into a souvenir shop in downtown Gettysburg. And this guy, single one man in a little store, and he's got a cigar box open, sitting on the counter, and it's half full of fired mini balls that he bought from some relic hunter for probably 25 cents a piece, 30 cents a piece. And they're just your average fired bullets,
mm-hmm.
Except they weren't. I started going through the box, and I find a fired 3-ringer with part of a Confederate soldier's button stuck to the end of it.
Mm.
That is a 1 in 1,000,000 find.
Mm.
I've already turned down offers. I've turned down offers of $1,200 for this bullet because I'm not in the real sales business.
Wow.
It's something. Anyway, so I have this bullet, and I realize that this guy doesn't know what he's got, this shopkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is he's got an awful price, $5 a bullet, when top retail at that time was $3 a bullet. He's gouging the tourists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because he's doing that, he doesn't have my sympathy.
Right.
And so I act like a dumb tourist. Oh, man, this is great. Look at these bullets. Wow, I got to take some of these home. And I'm watching him out of the corner of my eye, and I see this evil little snicker on his face. He's already mentally patting himself in the back because he thinks I'm really going to do this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I pick out 4 other mini balls, and I plop all 5 of them down on the counter gently, and I have my cash in my hand. And I said, "Can I buy these 5?" And I've got $25 right there. And this greedy rascal sees the money, and he doesn't pay any attention to the minis. And so he gets my $25, and I walk out of the store, both of us grinning from ear to ear.
Oh, that's too funny. That is too funny. That's a great story.
So, by the way, Mike, we don't want to exclude Gypsy. We want to get Gypsy to come to Kentucky, and we'll do either a Revolutionary War hunt or a Civil War hunt, Gypsy, that you can put on your
I'm ready.
on your channel. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
And Dayton's just an hour north of Cincinnati. If you guys wanted to, she wants to do some field hunting in Ohio, and it's just
do a whole week.
Yeah. It's been it's not a bad spring, but we've got some uncertain things this spring, and we canceled. We were talking about taking a trip, and we had to cancel it, but maybe this fall, or next spring. But eventually, yes, I'd love to get Gypsy up into the fields of Ohio. My good friend Donnie. I'm trying to think of Donnie's last name. I know it. It's just not coming to me. He calls me, puts me in his pocket, and him and I talk while he's metal detecting. And he's doing the fields in Ohio, and he was at one today, struck out. It was actually one I got permission for years ago. There's way off the road, probably not quite a half a mile, but pretty good distance. There's a little 2 or 3 trees standing, and there's like 2 or 3 headstones in there that you can still see. And the only one I could read, he died in 1800-something. And through research, I'd found out there was a church there. Well, the church predates the earliest maps. But I was not able to find the church when I detected it. But I only got one hunt in. The snow started flying. I called back in the spring to ensure I still had permission. And over the winter, the farmer's barn was broken into and some other things. And he said, "I remember you. You were great. I appreciate you calling, but I don't want anybody on my property anymore." He said it was nothing but a bad winter. I mean, he didn't suspect me. He was very nice. But Donnie knows him real good. Well, Donnie and I didn't know each other at the time. Matter of fact, Donnie wasn't even into metal detecting at the time. But I told him about it, and he went out there today, and he still cannot find the church, and I don't know where it's at. But I have 2 pieces of information that tells me there was a church there. And but anyhow, yeah. So I was hunting, but I've been hunting with him.
Mike, has anybody looked at the satellite maps and enlarged them to see if the general rectangle of the church shows up in the field?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you don't find that in Ohio. I know that there's people who say you can do that, and I'm by no means am I not saying you can't. But I had a guy show me a site where the ground was stained different. And he found a site there, and he's found some other, but he showed me example. I don't see that in that part of Ohio or the Dayton area where I hunted. So you'd have to step it up to infrared. You'd have to overfly and use infrared film was the only way that you would it would show up on infrared. Yeah, but it is.
But that's a more expensive, option there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we've both had boots on the ground and have not been able to find that church site. And Where I'm really confused is they were always, I mean, even the old church is still standing. The cemetery was right next to it, right behind it. The church, so where is it? I've never seen one that's hundreds of yards off, but we've circled all around that cemetery. He hit some other more out of the way places too, but I know I did a good 100-yard circle around that cemetery and never found anything. But anyhow, we're way off the rails here. Let's get back to it.
Okay. All right. For the benefit of your person that asked a question about the Copperheads, here's a book you might want to look up: The Hidden Civil War, The Story of the Copperheads. It was written in 1942. The author is Wood Gray, Gray.
Awesome.
Also, you can go to your local library, and they can access the Library of Congress's computerized catalogs, and you can do a search on Knights of the Golden Circle, and you will get all kinds of books if you want to research this farther. Okay, so getting back to the KGC now. They've decided they've got to finance this second Civil War. So it's going to take a lot of money. So one of the ways, of course, they do it is what they would do, and I didn't finish this a while ago, once they had they made a good hit on a train or a bank, and a lot of these trains and banks were actually owned or almost owned, as it were, by a man named Jay Gould, a man who caused an international depression, but in cornering the market, was it on silver? I think so. Anyway, Jay Gould and Jesse James were actually bitter enemies. And what Jesse would do, what the Golden Circle would do, he was the treasurer. He was responsible for the way that the funds they procured were not only used, but hidden. What they would do is they would take the money that they'd stolen, and they would go into the stock market, and they would invest in the railroads and other booming businesses, because the United States was really, starting to develop after the Civil War. So they would make the fortunes they'd stolen, they would use to make more fortunes. And this was one of the ways they got so much money and funds to hide away in over 3,000 caches.
That's incredible.
Are we still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, these guys were smart. And Jesse, in his lifetime, used 71 different aliases. He used the railroad magnate, J.W. Gates was one of his aliases. He and Henry Ford were very close. Jesse financed Henry Ford's first car operation. And in return, Henry Ford looked the other way when Jesse used his name, his alias, when it suited him and for a particular purpose.
Oh, that is so funny.
So, the boys are doing pretty good. They're putting away the stuff, and they had other resources. They had 92 working gold mines out in the Big Bend country of Texas, and the geologists will jump up and down and scream and say, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. There isn't any gold in Texas. And yet there is. And they worked those mines. There is. They worked those mines, and they closed them down around 1916. I could be off in that year, early 1900s. The Golden Circle, as the years went by and the funds mounted, they thought, and they started calling what they were doing the lost cause. People think that was applied to the Civil War, but actually it was for the operation of the Confederate resistance after the Civil War. So when they saw that they could not rouse up the Southern people enough to fight a second Civil War, they saw that their sons who were growing up, a lot of them were not interested in being part of the Golden Circle and doing all this stuff. They finally came to the conclusion that they would have to cache everything in special depositories that they would build, and it would have to sit there waiting for a time better suited to starting this rebellion or the Second Civil War. What they didn't know was, and this is a secret that not very many KGC researchers know at all. Not very many at all. The Golden Circle was being manipulated by a much more powerful organization. It was also an occult organization. And I say occult because if you go into the Mason books, Morals and Dogma, Sky's Right Masonry, there's a lot of a mysticism and occultism in that book. It's just a fact. And if you're going to mess around with the occult and talk about all these pagan gods throughout history and everything, and quote them and hold them up for inspection and saying that that they did great things, well, then you're going to be called an occult organization. I'm sorry. You don't want to be, then get rid of that. Get that out of your organization. Well, there was one much higher up called the Knights Templars. And supposedly the Knights Templars were an organization that was formed in Israel at the time of King Solomon. And then supposedly they were Knights of the Temple of King Solomon. And that is not correct at all. The Knights Templars go way, way back in history to ancient Babylon. And they have been hiding caches of money for thousands of years. And they never intended to allow the Knights of the Golden Circle to actually use this money to start a second civil war. It was their intention that it stay cached. Now, the caches varied in size from a few $1,000s to 8 super caches that had as many as 40,000 40 and 60-pound gold bars in them. There was a super cache that actually was revealed. It's called the Treasure of Victorio Peak. If you want to look it up, you'll find plenty of information. And a man named Doc Noss was prospecting around Victorio Peak back in the early 1900s and found where an earthquake had opened a crack back into the mountain. And he was able to squeeze through that crack until he broke into a cave system. And there were stacks of gold bars and things, things of value filling this cave. Well, he had actually gotten into one of the Knights of the Golden Circle super caches and didn't know it. Had he tried to enter through the sealed entrance, because once they had finished stashing this stuff, they filled up the tunnel. They built tunnels big enough for a horse and wagon to travel through, and they would bring it in by the wagon load. And once they filled up the tunnels with dirt and rock, they set booby traps on the big caches, sometimes black powders, sometimes a combination of black powder and what we call a flood trap, where you move a certain rock or something and the whole ceiling comes down and there's a big reservoir of water above you and you get drowned if you're not killed by the
Dorian,
rocks.
real quick, we got a couple questions. If I hate stopping you because for me that's really hard to do to keep my train of thought.
Not a problem.
Steve wants to know if the Confederados had anything to do with all of this.
I'll be honest with you, Steve. You throw me a curve. I don't know what a Confederado is.
I don't either. Good. Okay. Not just me. Something we can look into. Maybe Steve can reach out to us and fill us in a little bit, and might be another path of research. Bill wants to know, what about the supposed KGC cache in Pennsylvania recently? Do you have any insight on that?
There have been a lot of alleged KGC caches found that were not KGC. How much? I'm not up to date on the Pennsylvania cache. What was the value of it?
I'm not sure. I don't think they found it. I think the feds come in and have taken over and stuff. Do you know of any caches there? I guess
there are caches in every state. There are caches in every state in the union.
Okay. So possibly
there is Mike. There is a major cache that is buried in the corner of the lawn in the Ohio State House.
Really?
Yeah, several $1 million.
Wow. I wonder how much trouble I'd get into for digging up the lawn. The State House.
Well, you'd probably need some kind of an official looking truck with the Ohio State seal on the side, and and a bright yellow shirt and all that.
You know what? Well, I bet we could get Gypsy to steal one.
Oh dear. Well,
Give me the-
I guess historically, you know, they we're noted for things like that. Okay. Yeah, I better not go down that politically correct road.
Right.
I was told recently that we can't refer to them as gypsies anymore. That the new politically correct term is Romanos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Bill says that's
anyway.
public property. Ken says he'll provide us with the bright shirts. He makes shirts. So there you go. We just
love it.
we just
Yeah.
need Gypsy to sweet talk one of them guys out of his truck, letting us borrow it. And while you're at it, actually get a big dump truck with a backhoe.
I watched a show last night on, it might have been the History Channel. I don't even remember what it was. I'm here at my parents', and I was so tired when I got back from the Charles Garrett Memorial Hunt. And I was watching a show, and I saw the previews. My brother said, "Oh, you got to watch this. They usually use metal detectors and stuff like that." And anyway, it talked about the the real popular treasure that so many people are looking for right now by Forrest, whatever his name is. And then it talked about a book called The Secret. And The Secret, this guy, he writes a book, and he puts these, he goes into these city parks all over, like one was in Cleveland, Ohio, and one was all these different states, and he would dress up in a workman's outfit with the vest and a hard helmet and everything, and go into these city parks and bury these treasures. And in the book, you would go in and you would look at this work of art that would have the hints in it along with the written hints, and you would go try to find this treasure. And only 3 of them had been found. And then since then, the man has passed away that wrote the books. But I was like, well, I might as well just put a cache together and go bury it somewhere and write a book or make a YouTube video and have someone go find it.
Hold on, you're getting off track. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm way off track.
No, that's okay. No, I just want to get back.
It reminded me of, go get a backhoe and pretend to go in as like some worker.
Here's my thing.
You know what?
Government moves so slow. I guarantee if we pulled up there in hard hats and vests with a backhoe and a truck with the seal on it, we would dig it up. We could take lunch breaks. Everything else, and we would be long gone before they even realized what hit them. Guaranteed.
All right, just stop right there, please.
Yeah.
All right, you two guys have done a beautiful job of illustrating the point, because I got the exact reaction out of you I wanted. You have been manipulated, guys. You have been manipulated. Now, to your listeners, I want to show you what I did. All right.
Uh-oh.
You got all excited, and you guys started showing the larcenous side of your hearts. You're willing to go up there and steal this treasure right out of the State House lawn. Now, here's my point, everybody. Here's my point. This is I don't know what you want to call it. This is the magic, the power that KGC has to move people to start thinking about things they wouldn't ordinarily do.
Right.
All right, I'm going to make a very bold statement. The KGC treasures are the most dangerous treasures that I know of in the world to hunt. Not only because the bigger ones are booby-trapped, and there have been a number of treasure hunters killed trying to recover things hidden in caves. One of my friends, I wrote an article about the red hand means danger. And that means if you ever start to go in a cave and you see even traces of what was once a red hand painted over the entrance to the tunnel, or maybe to a tunnel inside a cave where it branches off, keep out of that tunnel, because it's telling you there's an explosive device that was planted by the Golden Circle. Now,
That's scary.
the booby traps were handled by ex-Confederate ordnance men who worked, with cannon shells and black powder and all that stuff. And they were experts, and they figured out how to set these traps so that they don't, fizzle out with age. They're still potent. A lot of people don't know that the black powder, as it ages, can actually start sweating crystals of nitroglycerin on it. So the thing is, when you hunt treasure with your emotions, and you get what I call gold fever, you get all excited about the thought of digging up millions and things, you can blunder into these situations, and you have just about enough time to say oops as your whole life flashes in front of your eyes, and then nothing. So please take the warning. Okay.
Well, I hope we are completely joking. I'm not gonna. And
I know that.
In chat, they're making a really good point. There would have to be at least 8 of us, and 7 of us sitting around, and one of them actually running the backhoe. And so this is very true. To make it official, and we figured I'm going to sit on a bucket and eat a sandwich. Well, we got to have somebody run the backhoe. Somebody's going to hold a slow sign. We're going to have some guys just sitting around in their trucks talking.
Hey,
so we're going to need a pretty big crew.
I'm the guy in the long sleeve white shirt with a tie and a hard hat and a clipboard under my arm.
Yep. We need 2 of those probably. Probably need 2 of those.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So
okay.
we're gonna need Gypsy to steal several trucks.
Okay.
Official trucks.
Okay. Here's the point. All right. So now let me explain something about the bigger caches. And I want to give you a couple examples. Of the 8 caches, one of them is now buried under a freeway in Los Angeles. Another one in Colorado, 2 or 3 treasure hunters in the 1950s triggered the booby trap, and they brought down an entire mountain on top of the entrance. You'd have to move several million tons of rock now to get to the entrance. And they're still in there. And by the way, there was not one of the 8 super caches, but a big cache. And a big cache could be, 40, 50 million. The super caches were literally 250, 300, 350 billion with a B dollars.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So the big ones are not worth dying for. There's too much money in them. But I have some good news. The Knights being so clever, they would put in a decoy cache, and that decoy cache might have 10 million in gold in it. And it would be near the site of the big cache, and they like to carve rock markers, and there would be markers leading to the decoy cache that were easier to decode than the markers leading to the super cache. So what would happen, the idea was the treasure hunter comes, he finds, it was designed that he would find the decoy site markers first. And if he could translate those, they weren't just real easy, but if he could figure it out, the fact that it took him some work to decode it and then find it, and then he goes in and finds $10 million in gold bullion or coin, he thinks, oh man, all these legends about the KGC, there wasn't as much as they said, but at least there's 10 million, not realizing that he was only in a decoy cache. The decoy caches were deliberately not booby trapped.
I think I could deal with 10 million. What about you, Gypsy?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'll take the decoy.
Now, let me tell you an experience that proves this. During my tenure at Garrett, I was able to get all the manufacturers to send a rep to the factory there in Dallas, and we formed the American Metal Detector Manufacturers Association. And the pitch I was giving the manufacturers was, let's stop fighting over each other's share of the market, and let's work together to build a bigger market for everybody. and it sounded good, but boy, these guys were super competitive, and that part didn't play out. But at the end of the day, Charlie Garrett wanted me to take these guys out. Most of these guys were, social drinkers and stuff, and he wanted me to take them out somewhere where they could, have a good time, relax a little bit. And because Charlie wouldn't ever go to the places like that. He was, I think, a deacon in the Church of Christ, and he was, real strict about those things. So there was a nightclub, kind of a place near the factory called the Junkyard, and it was all decorated with antique and car parts and things you might find in an old junkyard, And it was done nicely. And there was an old school bus that they'd taken all the seats out and put tables in. So there was about 10 or 12 of us, with the manufacturer's reps. And so we took over this school bus, and we're having a good time, talking shop, and everybody. It was so funny because all these reps, everybody's trying to get the other reps to reveal some secret, about their future marketing plans or what they're going to bring out. Yeah, it was. I wish I could have videoed it. It would make a great video. But anyway, I had a dealer from Wichita Falls, Texas, named Jerry Eckert. Jerry was a local weatherman on the station there, and Jerry has a lot of accomplishments. He's kind of like Keith Wells with all the things that he's done in melody technique. Anyway, Jerry and I were friends, and we were actually partners in hunting the KGC caches. And Jerry had a grandfather, I think it was, that had been in the KGC. So, we had some clues from that direction. So Jerry was with us. He'd come down to the factory to pick up some detectors, and I invited him to go out with the reps. So, sure enough, he's going to get in on that. So we're sitting there talking, and we happen to be close to the open window of the school bus. And this guy, who's obviously 3 sheets in the wind, comes up, and he looks in at us, and he says, let's see, I'll have to clean this up here a little bit. Y'all are the ugliest bunch of so-and-sos that I ever saw in my life, and I'm going to buy y'all a drink. And he did. He bought a round for everybody. So he's standing there leaning, kind of holding himself up, hanging onto the window frame, and he says, my business is going to lose $35,000 this year, and I could care less. I'm never going to have to work again. And we're thinking, oh, great, that's all we need, is a mouthy drunk to put up with here. And he repeated this a couple of times, and he put his hand up, one hand up there on the window, and here's this big, heavy gold ring, about 3 ounces of gold on his finger. And it has a special insignia on the ring. It has it's divided into 4 sections. It's square. The face of the ring is square, divided into 4 sections by the gold bars. And then in these 2 sections, or 2 opposing sections, like diagonal, at the top left corner is a delicately engraved flower. In the bottom right section is like a pillar that kind of wraps around itself. It's hard to describe. It's like it spirals in the middle, and then it has 2 straight lines bordering it on each side, and it runs at a diagonal, and it's kind of running up and down, pointing towards the flower. And then the other 2 sections, the lower left and upper right, have a kind of a stippled pattern section, nothing distinct in the way of a symbol. And I'm looking at that ring, and my mouth falls open. And Jerry sees the ring, and his mouth falls open. And he turns to me, and he says, do you know what that is? I said, yes, I do. That's a Knights of the White Camellia signet ring. And he says, you're right. And I said, and the guy saying, I'll never have to work again. I'm going to lose money in my plumbing business, and I don't care. And so we decide we need to talk to this poor old drunk. So we excuse ourselves because the guys are talking shop. And we go to the other end of the school bus. There's nobody else in it. We get away where these guys can't hear us. And we start talking to him. And so it turns out he had a relative who was in the Knights of the Golden Circle, left a map. he followed the map, and he got into one of the decoy caches on one of the big Super 8 caches.
Right.
That cache, Gypsy, that cache is buried in a mesa near Salado, Texas.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Now, don't get too excited. No. I was working. He told us, and it was funny because we tried to get him to tell us where he got it. Oh, and he'd shake his finger and say, "Oh, no, you're not going to get me to tell that." And I said, "I know where you got it." And he looked at me kind of strange. I said, "Salado, Texas." His eyes got big, and he pointed at me, and he started shouting. "He knows! He knows!"
Wow.
And I knew that gold ring had come out of the cache at Salado. And I knew that he hadn't gotten into the big cache, so it had to be the decoy. Now, once I broke the ice with Salado, he starts opening up. And he tells us that the creek, which is shallow, you can wade it, probably up to your knees. As I recall. Pardon me just a second. I'm going to grab a quick drink of water. Got a tickle in my throat.
My phone may be about to die.
I don't think I can catch what you got, Gypsy, over the telephone.
I hope not. It's not to the phone.
Okay. All right. So we get talking to him, and he says, you go down the creek, and he says, there's this big pool. And he says, you have to dive under the bank, and there's a tunnel, and you swim about 30 feet, and you come up inside a cave, and that's where it is. So I started working my way up the creek. I'd made 2 or 3 trips, and I really felt like I was getting close. And I think I'd already figured out which mesa that the super cache was hidden inside of. But about that time, back at the factory, Charles Garrett hires this man to be a dealer rep, to go out and visit our dealers. And that had been part of my job. That was part of my job as the marketing director. And so he didn't even consult me. And so I was a little bit put out by that. And this guy was ex-military, ex-Green Beret, and really full of himself. And so he decides to start visiting dealers, and he happened to pick none other than my Golden Circle hunting partner, Jerry Eckert. So he takes Jerry out to wine him and dine him. And during the wining and dining, he drinks too much wine and gets mouthy. And he pulls out his intelligence organization credentials and tells Jerry how that he has been assigned to watch me, and if I get too close to the cache at Salado, to kill me. Well, Jerry's in shock, and he excused himself to go to the bathroom, and there was a payphone in the hallway that out of sight, and he called me right from the restaurant when that happened and told me, and that was the first indication I had that I was getting in over my head into something that I had no idea just how big it was. I can tell you now, I've had 3 assassination attempts on my life from the people guarding the Golden Circle caches. The last time I was driving by the Cincinnati airport, the bullet came through the side window of my truck, missed my neck by 2 inches, and blew out the back glass in my truck. So at that point, I was able to stop that nonsense by working out a quid pro quo. I agreed to quit hunting the big Golden Circle super caches, and they agreed to quit trying to kill me, with the caveat that if they did, and that I had arranged to have some information they didn't want made public released. And so that's why I'm still alive to talk to you today. I didn't intend to be Dorian Jones, that wasn't what I set out to do. But the point is, I blundered into that because I didn't have complete information. Can everybody take a lesson here? You see, you can have good information that is bad information because you're missing part of it. And you can get yourself in trouble because of the incomplete information you're missing. So
Yeah,
you've learned.
You totally turned me off on it. I don't want to go hunt it now.
Well, you know what? The decoy caches you can get away with, but they're not going to let anybody dig into the big ones. The one at Victoria Peak, Doc Noss managed to get, carrying 2 of these heavy gold bars at a time, he managed to get 50 bars out of the cache. And he tried to sell them to a man who had a history of being a former employee of one of the alphabet soup agencies. You know, if you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And that man killed him. And there's a picture of Doc Noss slumped dead over his front bumper of his truck. You can find that on the net if you do the search. And immediately the Army suddenly incorporates Victoria Peak into the White Sands Missile Range, and now it is totally off limits. However, the vice commander of the White Sands Missile Range was a treasure hunter. I met him. We became good friends. And he explained to me that the Army, using an experimental laser drill, went in there and drilled a tunnel right into the mountain and emptied that cache. So it's not there, folks. Forget Victoria Peak.
Wow. So did the United States take that over, or who got it?
That's a good question.
I gotcha.
See, it's like this. If you control the commander of a particular military unit, you in effect control the whole unit. So elements of our military and other organizations have been subverted to do the hidden agenda work of various people, bad guys in high places.
I gotcha.
Now, they, like I said, the Golden Circle caches can vary from a few $1,000s to, to a few million or a few 100,000. They all different sizes. The Knights Templars have been hiding caches, 3,000 just by the Golden Circle alone. If you add in the ones that are all over Europe and all over Russia and everywhere else, they've hidden caches for several thousand years. You've got, probably 25, 30,000 caches, and that's just a guess of treasure. That's where a lot of the great treasures have disappeared and gone to. For example, King Solomon had a throne, excuse me, made out of ivory, solid ivory. Its value today would be priceless, and it's disappeared into history. But who would dismantle such a thing or destroy it? It's hidden somewhere.
Yeah, I've often wondered that. There's all these great treasures over, and where is it all? I mean, of course, there's some in museums around the world and stuff, but there's a lot of things that are missing. A lot of things.
Right. Well, those treasures are not meant to be disturbed by the likes of us, because they've been put there for a special purpose. These people who have done this are religious fanatics, and that's why they will kill you in a heartbeat. Because they believe their religious creed allows them to do that, like certain extremists over in the Middle East think that if they kill you, that God claps his hands. It's just good job. So, because they're extremists, how many of you saw the? How many? How can I ask that? Obviously, but obviously a number of you are familiar with the book or the movie The Da Vinci Code. And the plot around it was, that there was this line of kings that were descended from a union with Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And supposedly they had a son named Jesus Justus, and that this line of kings began, and today they're called Merovingians, and that the last king in that line will be their Messiah. And all of these treasures were hidden away for this last king. Now, you understand, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm telling you that's what they believe. And that's why they're willing, to put an end to your life if you are threatening their major caches. They're not worried about you finding their $10,000 cash or even a $2 or $3 million cash. That's pocket change. As we used to say, chump change to them, because they're dealing with billions and trillions of dollars in treasure.
Wow.
Now,
real quick,
that's the overview.
I think we've been at it 2 hours. We can do more shows. No rush. Let's find a good stopping point, and where you think we can continue the next show.
Okay. Well, I could end up here and just tell you real quick how Jesse faked his death.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Well, at the time, this country didn't have, in the 1870s, the Secret Service was not yet formed. The men that did the work of what the Secret Service does today were called the Pinkertons. They were from the Pinkerton Detective Agency. And they were the main law enforcement group. They had been given authority by the federal government to track down Jesse James. And so they were constantly trying to do that. So Jesse managed to stay with all of his aliases that he used and the different places that he stayed, and the fact that they used their cousins during this time, Frank and Dingus James, or Dingus Jesse. They used them to help confuse the Pinkertons. The Pinkertons would get a telegram: Jesse James has been sighted in St. Joe, Missouri. And then almost immediately, another telegram would come in: Jesse and Frank James seen in Canton, Texas. Well, what they were dealing with was two sets of Jesse and Frank James, and they didn't know it. So it caused confusion and made it hard for them to coordinate their efforts. Which of these claims is right? They got the telegram. Okay, so that was one of the ways they kept they used their cousins to help keep the Pinkertons off balance. Well, anyway, it came to the point where Jesse heard about three brothers. They were the Bigelow brothers, and they were living in St. Joe, Missouri. And they had a lady who would be described best as a working girl, and she was there with them in the house. And I forgot to look up the names to see. Charlie, Bert, and I forget the third brother's name. Charlie was the oldest. He was the central figure. Now, what the Bigelow boys had been doing is robbing banks.
Mm-hmm.
And they would, they had a bad habit of assaulting the female employees and committing other ravishings in that area. And Charlie would shout out as they were leaving the bank, you can tell everybody that Jesse James just robbed your bank. Well, see, Jesse was starting to be associated with these sexual assaults on all these women. And being part of what we call the Southern chivalry, that just wasn't going to do. So he decided that the Bigelow brothers had to go.
Interesting.
So they set up an operation, Golden Circle spies, again, ex-Confederate soldiers, already skilled, in these kind of arts, as it were. They began to watch the house, and they reported to Jesse that every morning at 8:00, the three Bigelow brothers came out of the house and went to the barn. There was an outhouse inside the barn. So, they obviously, the three of them had a schedule where they took care of, business. And so Jesse took that into account and showed up one morning with his men. He was backed up by several men. Now, Jesse, this is not well known, but Jesse had a bodyguard named John Trammell. John Trammell had been a black slave down in, I think, Mississippi, somewhere down that area, that had been fought by his owner. They would have these bare-knuckle fist fights in somebody's barn. There was a whole bunch of the slave owners, and of course they would bet money. And John Trammell had fought 22 fights when Jesse finally saw him fight. And in the previous 22 fights, John Trammell had killed all of his opponents just by hitting them. And John Trammell fought the 23rd and killed that man also, hit him so hard it broke his neck. And Jesse went to the owner. He went to the owner, and by the way, his original name was Sam Skates. And he went to Sam Skates' owner, and he bought Sam Skates from the owner and immediately set him free. Well, Sam was so instantly grateful for what Jesse had done because he wasn't liking what they were making him do. He was not enjoying killing these men. But he didn't have any choice. So Jesse sets him free with no strings attached. And John Trammell decided he was going to be, or he changed his name to John Trammell just shortly. Sam decided he was going to be Jesse's bodyguard. And he was constantly at Jesse's side for the rest of his long life. Now, so Jesse and John are going to take care of the three Bigelow boys. His men are told, to wait around the perimeter, don't come out of hiding. We need you, we'll call you. John carried an over and under rifle, a shotgun and then a regular rifle.
Okay.
That was kind of his trademark. Jesse, of course, was a pistol fighter. Jesse, this particular day, if you've ever seen it in the books, he was wearing cast iron body armor covering his chest under his vest and shirt. It was a two-piece thing, cumbersome, but Jesse had it on. And there was a regular man-sized door and a big barn door. And Jesse opened that door, and he was silhouetted in the sunlight to whoever was in the barn. And he told him, Charlie Bigelow, something like, Charlie Bigelow, I've come for you. Charlie immediately shot at Jesse. And, of course, when he shot, Jesse keyed on the flash of his gun in the darkened interior of the barn. But Charlie's bullet hit the very top edge of Jesse's cast iron body armor and went through his right shoulder, right at the top. So Jesse fired, and he hit Charlie Bigelow over the right eye. That was his trademark. When he executed, he put a bullet over the right eye. John Trammell came in the back door of the barn while everybody was distracted by Jesse. John comes in immediately, and with his over and under, he kills the other two Bigelow brothers. So he had John. Jesse had John and a couple of the boys dig a big deep hole in the front yard of the house. And he goes into the house to speak to the lady who's living there been living with these guys, and he tells her, he says, "You have a choice." He says, "I can kill you, or you could be Jesse James' wife and receive $10,000 cash." Well, being a working girl, you can understand her choice.
Right.
She took door number one. Well, Jesse took Charlie Bigelow, stood him up against the wall of the house, fired a bullet into the back of his head, and he turned to Bob Ford. He said, "Bob, go tell the sheriff you killed Jesse James." About that time, one of his men came in and told him the Pinkertons were at the edge of town. They were getting close. So they hurriedly buried the Bigelow brothers, and while the guys were digging in the last part of the grave, John Trammell built a little fire, and took some wet clay and made 2 bricks and baked them. Actually, he engraved the story of who was buried in that grave on the bricks. And he baked them in a fire so they would turn to rock hard, and those bricks were put in the hole with the 2 dead bodies. So that was dug up. I've got a copy of the newspaper article where they dug up their grave. They show the bricks. I got to see the bricks in the picture of the newspaper.
Wow.
But I heard the story. I heard the story from Jesse III before I ever knew about the newspaper article.
Wow, that's interesting.
But now you have, here's Charlie Bigelow. He's dead against the wall. And Bob Ford is claiming that he killed Jesse James. Well, nobody in town knew what Jesse James looked like. So they cable the governor of Missouri, Governor Crittenden. Well, Crittenden was a member of the inner circle of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Wow.
And his official aide, like a lieutenant governor, his number 2 man, was none other than Harrison Trow, who had been that trusted captain of Quantrill I told you about at the beginning.
Wow.
So the sheriff cables Governor Crittenden and says, we have a man claiming to kill Jesse James, but we don't know what he looks like. Do you have anybody there you can send down? And Crittenden telegraphs back, sure, I can send Harrison Trow. He rode with Jesse Quantrill. So by prearrangement, Harrison Trow gets on the train, and at a particular little town between the capital, St. Louis, and St. Joe, Trow gets off the train, and Jesse James gets on. So the train pulls into St. Joe. The sheriff and a crowd's there to meet the train, and Jesse gets off, posing as Harrison Trow.
Wow.
So they take him to Charlie Bigelow's body, and Jesse identifies Harrison Trow as Jesse James. Jesse was one of the pallbearers at his own funeral. How about that one?
Huh. Interesting.
He told his grandson later, he said, that preacher preached me a beautiful sermon. He said, I sat there with tears in my eyes.
How funny
so
is
that's how Jesse James faked his death.
Wow.
And he finally took the alias of J. Frank Dalton. J for Jesse, Frank for his brother, and Dalton for his mother's maiden name. Jesse Frank Dalton. And just before he died, he was bedridden, and just a few months before he died, over 90 people came and testified and identified that he was Jesse James. Now, Mike, let me ask you, I forgot about this and just remembered it, and I would like to do this. Would you hang on just a few more minutes with me?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're no rush.
All right. I have a blockbuster to finish up with here, okay? I'm turning to it now. I've got it in the book here. I just need to get the right page. I'm going to read you the autopsy report on Jesse Frank Dalton's body. It is going to blow your mind.
Okay.
By the way, I have here in my files actual drawings, diagrams, and maps of several of the super caches. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm leaping through this thing.
Oh, no problem. No.
I found one
You're
copy.
kind of cutting out a little bit. We're okay.
Okay.
Though. It's not horrible. There you go. You sound pretty good there.
I had the phone cradled against my ear, trying to hold it with my shoulder.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, here we go. All right. I want to read you the results of the autopsy on the body of J. Frank Dalton, who died in 1951 at the age of 104.
Okay.
This is the official. I have a copy of the official autopsy report that was filed in Hood County, Texas courthouse. And by the way, over 90 people, including the Dalton boys and others, came and identified J. Frank Dalton as Jesse James before he died. But this is after he died, and here's what the coroner found on his body. Height 5'8" and 1/2, as nearly as could be determined, lying flat on his back. Eyes were blue, long hair was white, fair skin. Bullet wound through left shoulder, bullet wound on the lower half, left side of the belly, evidence of rope burns on his neck. And that was when the Redlegs came to, he was visiting his cousin Dingus, and the Redlegs came to their farmhouse, and they wanted Jesse to tell where his brother Frank was, who was riding with Quantrill then. Jesse wasn't with Quantrill yet, and he wouldn't do it. And they put a rope around his neck and pulled him off the ground several times and let him partially strangle. And that's where those rope burns came from, and the scars are still with him when he died.
Wow.
Okay, so anyway, number 6, bullet wound on the right side of the neck. And let's see. Number 7, bullet wound between shoulders and base of neck. Number 8, bullet wound along the hairline above both eyes. Number 9, bullet wound under the right eye, causing the eye to droop due to removal of a mole. Number 10, small scar along under right eyelid that may have been due to removal of mole. Number 11, scar of some undetermined kind on the lower lip. Number 12, powder burns across the chin hidden by Buffalo Bill type of goatees. That was from firing a rifle.
Okay.
Number 13, 2 bullet wounds on the right shoulder. Number 14, 3 or 4 bullet wounds along the left arm from wrist to elbow. Number 15, 3 or 4 bullet wounds indicated above elbow and left arm. Number 16, tip end sort of chewed off on the end of the left index finger. And by the way, that was one of the marks that was on the Pinkerton wanted posters for Jesse James. That he was missing the tip end of his finger.
Wow.
2 bullet wounds in his right chest near the nipple. He got those during the Civil War riding with Quantrill, and it was a lung wound, would have killed him, but Dr. Frank, his brother, operated on him and saved his life. Number 18, bullet wound along the right side near the second lower rib. Number 19, evidence of several bullet wounds up and down right arm, probably 9 or 10 wounds. Both feet. Number 20, show evidence of having been severely burned, scars on both knees. The Yankee soldiers did that to him when they captured him during the war to try to get him to tell where they'd hidden a big strongbox stolen off a steamboat. Number 21, bad wound on back between both of his hips. Number 22, cataracts, both eyes. That's it. That's it right there. Are you there?
Oh, I'm here. Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. So can you, from the research you've done, can you match most of their wounds with... Oh, I think I just lost you. There you are.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. So can you, through your research, can you match most
I hit the
of those?
volume control. Say something, Mike.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Are you, through your research, can you match most of those wounds to wounds Jesse James would have had?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The Pinkerton, you understand some of those wounds came later, but the Pinkertons, every identifying mark on their wanted posters in the 1870 which showed up on J. Frank Dalton's body.
Wow. Now,
that's for all the people that want to argue that J. Frank Dalton was not Jesse James, they cannot get around this autopsy report.
So let me ask you this: the people who deny this, what is their reasons for denying it? Has there been any facial recognition, or I'm sure there's been some of that going on? Like, what's the? I'm curious what the reasoning is.
Well, I'm going to have to reveal a secret here that the Smithsonian Institute isn't going to like. The U.S. government's in the treasure hunting business. The Smithsonian Institute is the biggest treasure hunting corporation in the world. The museums, as fabulous as they are, is their cover. We've gone nose to nose with the Smithsonian Institute, and Charlie Garrett lost a really big treasure. He and Roy Lego lost a really big treasure thanks to the Smithsonian Institute. Now, when I got all this stuff from Jesse that I didn't know the Golden Circle existed until Jesse James III filled me in. And by the way, I have gone to many sites that Jesse has sent me to by nothing but paper drawings, taking a piece of paper and drawing from memory. He had a photographic memory, and that ran in the James family. And I remember these maps he would draw me, a bluff and the river, and here's a military road and this. And every time I went and checked his drawings, they were dead on, spot on accurate, every single one of them. Jesse never sent me on a wild goose chase. He sadly was trying to open one of the caches in Arizona, and the man he had partnered with, unknown to him, was ex-Alphabet Soup agency guy, and the guy murdered him. It's plain and simple is what happened.
Wow.
His boys got a pair of bloody eyeglasses in the mail with a note from this guy saying, your father fell in the shower and hit his head and died.
Wow.
But he was about to make a major recovery on one of the caches. Anyway, so there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of stuff went on. It's a fascinating, I don't know, outside of the Oak Island money pit. And by the way, that was one of the Templar caches too. If you want to know who put the money in the Oak Island pit, it was the Knights Templars.
Really?
And yeah. And they took it out long before all the craziness started over there. It's not there. Anything they find over there would be simple decoy cache.
Wow. That's, I have figured either, I think something was there or is still there, but I've wondered that myself if it was taken out, but interesting.
Well, the big part was, they wanted to leave enough so that when the people dug it out, they would think they'd found everything was there. So they wouldn't go on looking for it somewhere else.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
I mean, think about it. If you're going to move a cache, you don't want to leave. I mean, you want to try to deceive the people that want your cache into thinking they got it.
Right. Interesting. I think on the last episode, don't hold me to this, or the preview for one coming up, there's going to be more evidence, or there was more evidence. I seen a commercial for it that leads them to believe it was Knights Templar. The more evidence that it was Knights Templar. So that's funny that you mentioned that. But yeah.
Yeah, the thing was, see, they're just coming to that conclusion, and I had that information back in the 80s.
Wow. Incredible. Where do you think it was moved to? Do you have any idea, or is that something you'd not want to talk about, or?
I wouldn't know. I mean, I can talk about it because I don't know where they moved it to, because you got to, like I said, remember, Mike, that I revealed to you that there are thousands and thousands of these caches around the world.
Yeah.
And you could only even superficially study a few of them. You can't study 20, 30,000 caches, as a treasure hunter. I mean, you can wrap your mind around the fact there are that many, but if you're going to look for them or show an interest in them, you're going to focus on just a few.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you about the ones that I focused on, like Salado, and I think I was getting very close to finding that hole in the creek where you dive under the bank, but I don't think I'd want to do that without a scuba gear. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because he said it was about. He said you had to swim about 30 feet underwater. Wow. Well, with no air. You had to make it in one breath. So, but anyway, I don't know what's happened. By this time, they could have come in, found that hole, and filled it full of rocks, so you wouldn't even know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they cut the guy off. He told me that he made one trip down there to get gold about every 3 months. The guy that found that cache.
Wow.
But anyway, well, I thought it an incredible coincidence, that I picked that place to take those guys and run into a guy who'd actually been in a Golden Circle cave.
Right. That is crazy.
And, I'll never forget that Knights of the White Camellia signet ring. Never forget it because Mike, it was so pure. It had little dents in it from where he'd bumped it against things. It had no alloy in it. It was pure gold.
Wow.
Did we lose Gypsy, or is she still with us?
Oh no, we lost her. Her phone went dead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I really enjoyed getting to talk with her some more tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm kind of speechless here. I'm not. Please don't think I'm being rude. You gave us so much information. My mind's just reeling. Next week, are you available next Tuesday?
Let me check my schedule because I'm coming up this next week. I'm as busy as I'm going to be. Next Tuesday night is not good for me. It would have to be Monday.
Okay, we can do Monday.
All right. Okay, that's fine. Monday's cool, but I got something going on Tuesday night. So.
Okay.
Are we still on the air or off?
No, we're still on the air. Yeah, we're still on the air. So next week, if we can, I would love to talk about more about Jesse James III.
Okay.
I'm sure after I calm down here and process more of this information you gave me, I'll have some more questions and stuff. But I mean, really, wherever you want to go with it, I mean, just keep telling the story. But I definitely want to get into some more of what Jesse James III gave you and where, how you came to some of this.
Yeah. Okay. One thing that I didn't finish, I said that Jefferson Davis wasn't captured. He walked beside two big wagons that had these giant logs. They were about 5 or 6 feet in diameter. And one of them was hollowed out, and they had 3 safes in that log that belonged to Jefferson Davis. And they got to Canton, Texas, and outside of Canton was a swamp. And ordinarily, it has a couple of feet of water in it, but there'd been a drought, and it had dried up. And they dug a hole 11 feet deep, and they stacked those 3 safes of Jefferson Davis on top of each other in that swamp. And, I can't say for sure, but as far as I know, that treasure could still be there. One of the chests, one's documents, one of them has his personal fortune, gold and stuff in it.
Wow.
But Jefferson Davis served on the inner circle and the Knights of the Golden Circle. He was another one of those. And
that's incredible.
General Joe Shelby, who had what was called the Iron Brigade of the Confederate Army, General Joe Shelby was also one of the 12 members.
Wow.
El Fago Baca, all of you the old guys that remember the Disney show El Fago Baca, El Fago Baca was also a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. There were many characters in history that were. And,
it was just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But yeah, and next week, if we can wrap it up, great. If not, we can go into a part 3. You've given us so much information. Like I said, my mind's I'm trying to wrap my mind around it all at this point. And it's kind of left me a little speechless.
Well, that's the thing is, and kind of one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to overwhelm everybody a little bit is I want you all to understand that you don't know history. All you know is what they taught you. Mm-hmm. They didn't teach you how to dig out the truth about history. All they did was fill you full of historical propaganda. It's a mixture of truth and error. Some things you got taught in school were right. Others were totally off the mark.
Why is that? I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, there's so many things I've learned since, since school that is so wrong. Why is that?
Well, here we're going to get into the gospel according to Dorian, okay? I can offer you I would like to call it just an opinion.
Okay.
You know, Abraham Lincoln gave one of the most famous speeches in history at Gettysburg Address. You know, I probably could recite that thing all the way through, even having learned it as a kid, you know, 7 years ago and so on.
Uh-huh.
But one of the lines in the Gettysburg Address said that this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought that hook, line, and sinker when I was in school.
Okay.
Now, 50-some years later, I would like to see that line change to that this government of the rich, by the rich, and for the rich shall not perish, sir.
Right.
Because I think it would make the speech a whole lot more accurate.
Right. True.
And I think these powerful, wealthy people have hidden agendas. You know, in our time now, the term New World Order is common. It was not common back even in the 70s. Anybody who used that term was automatically labeled a conspiracy nut and not to be taken seriously in anything they say, automatically.
Right.
But now you could talk about the New World Order without losing your creds, so to speak.
Right.
But I see the patterns in so much of our life. You know, for example, anybody that takes out a loan at your friendly neighborhood bank for your house. Let's say you got a $200,000 house, you pay off all but $2,000. And then you're in a bad traffic wreck, and you're going to be a year recuperating in a body cast, et cetera. And you can't make that last payments. What's the bank going to do?
Take your house.
Okay. What are they going to do with that house?
Sell it.
How much did you actually owe on that house?
Pennies.
$2,000, right?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't catch how much you were saying. Yeah.
Okay. So you owe $2,000. So they sell the house for $200,000. Why not take the $2,000 plus whatever expenses it cost them to sell the house out of that, and then give you the rest back?
Right.
Why should you be left totally broken? You see, when you had done so much, you'd come so close to fulfilling your obligation. Why should you be penalized so terrible? Would poor people make that rule?
No.
Huh?
Absolutely.
Who made that rule?
Right, the rich.
Yeah, who made the rules?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So let me ask you another question. You know, history's written by the victor, right? You've said that,
right?
And we talk about the rich and stuff. So let me ask you this: I think in this, you know, in present day, and heck, since I was a kid. How do I say this without sounding politically incorrect? You know, we hear, you know, in school I was taught about the atrocities against the American Indians. And don't get me wrong, right. There absolutely was. But a lot of the stuff I've read, they were brutal too. And I didn't grow up hearing about that. I learned that on my own. So why are things like that? You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I know that doesn't really fit, but it is a question that kind of goes along with some of this.
I had to address that when I wrote Kentucky in the early years, volumes 1 and 2. I had to address this question. And
hold on. You're cutting out real bad.
Yeah. How about now?
It sounds great right now.
Okay. I had to address that question. And I thought if I'm going to help people understand the early years in Kentucky, then they have to understand what went before when it comes, because, you know, we had 40 years plus of Indian wars here on the Kentucky frontier. And they were brutal. Many, tens of thousands of people died.
Mm-hmm.
But the history of the Indian was like this. The very Indians that we fought with, the Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I mean, this is not, I'm not saying this because I'm prejudiced against Native Americans, you know. I've got a lot of friends that have a lot of Native American in them, and, you know, it doesn't bother me at all. It's great. That's fine. But the point is, in this time in history, I want to talk about historical accuracy, it's not about race, it's about historical accuracy.
Right.
The fact was that all the Indian tribes lived by fighting each other before the white man got here and
right.
taking each other's land.
Mm-hmm.
There are we know of 6 tribes that were totally wiped out, and we would call that genocide today.
Mm-hmm.
They were wiped out by their fellow Indians, the Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
They don't exist anymore. Their land was taken. So what really happened to the Indians was, you know, it's kind of like the good book says, you know, whatever you render to someone is going to be rendered back to you. And so they fought each other and scrapped over land, and the white man came in and took their land.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, from one perspective, it wasn't like they were innocent victims. You know, they were habitually taking other people's land. And they just ended up having the same thing happen to them. Did the white man use deceitful tactics, things like that? Of course he did.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about the Indians losing their land, having it taken by the white man, let's talk about Daniel Boone and Simon Kenton, 2 of the greatest frontier heroes. They
right.
had hundreds of thousands of acres.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? They lost all their land to shysters in the corrupt courts.
Right.
Judges who'd been bribed.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Yep. Yep.
And most of these wonderful, hardy Scots, Irish, and German and Scandinavian pioneers that came in and settled the frontier and fought the Indians and lost loved ones and had their cabins burned and rebuilt and so on, they all got cheated out of their land because as soon as it was safe, the land speculators, the swindlers, the corrupt judges and courts moved in, and they illegally or unethically deprived all these brave people of their land.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they didn't deprive them until these people had done the hard work of running the Indians out.
Right. Exactly.
Simon Kenton moved to Ohio, you know, and I guess he lived for many years and died near Springfield up there, wasn't it?
Yeah, Urbana. Yep.
Urbana. Yeah, thank you. You know, he lost all of his land.
All of it in Kentucky and everything else. Yeah, he had a lot of
Yep.
property in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you know, he didn't get all bitter about it, you know, and he was able to keep on going. He just says, okay, you know, I'm going to have to make a change. I'm going to relocate. Daniel Boone got bitter about it. He was always bitter about it the rest of his life.
Mm.
He'd sacrificed 2 sons to claim Kentucky land.
Yeah.
And he got cheated out of about 235,000 acres, I think.
Now, he ended up in Missouri, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He lived into his mid-80s, I think. But he was older than Simon Kenton. He died before Kenton did.
Okay, yeah. How did, well, I don't know. We'll get into all that later. We're getting off subject.
Yeah.
We're 2.5 hours into this. I think,
Yeah.
you know, good place to stop. But Dorian, again, thank you so much for coming on. What a great show. People in chat are saying we need him back, get him back. We got to hear the rest of the story and stuff. So, of course, we'll get you back on next Monday.
Sure.
And looking forward to it, of course. And again, everybody, we dig the Civil War I'm sorry, We Dig the Civil War headquarters. Check it out. I'm telling you, you do have some requests. So when you get a chance, you do have some people that are already requesting to join. From what they said tonight.
Okay.
So,
we'll take care of those as soon as we get off the show.
Awesome. All right, Dorian, thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely fantastic.
Had a great time, Mike. It's nice to have an audience that actually is interested in hearing these stories, because if we don't, old guys don't tell these, they're going to die out.
Yeah.
Now, we got a whole bunch of people that are going to be retelling these stories, and that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we appreciate
they deserve
it. It's awesome. I've never met anybody like you, and what an honor to have you on, and so appreciative that you'll share your stories and spend your time with us. We appreciate it so much. So much.
Well, it's like I said, it's been fun for me. This is adult fun, or old geezer fun, if you want to call it that. Yeah,
I enjoy it too so much. Like, I feel as we do the shows towards the end, I get real quiet and stuff. I've taken on so much information. I'm trying to process. I mean, believe me, I listen to every word coming out of your mouth. I put myself on mute just to keep the noise down, but I'm listening to every single thing, and I've enjoyed it so much, and so has our listeners. So, Dorian, we appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I do apologize. I do have a tendency to try to give you a drink of water from a fire hose. I try. I mean, I really enjoy sharing this information, and I want to do it so much that I don't always realize that. Everybody's saying, hold on, give us a chance to swallow here. And so I apologize in advance for that.
When we have you on, the chat moves so slow. There's hardly anything going. It's because everybody's just tuned in and listening, which is great. It tells me that everybody's really loving the show, and we appreciate it.
Well, that's great, Mike. Be sure and get that $10,000 check in the mail to me right away.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, guys.
All right, thank you, sir.
Well,
appreciate it.
We wish everybody a good night, and like we say here in the Appalachians, y'all come.
Right. Thank you, Dorian. Good night.
Good night.
All right, there you go, everybody. Wrapped it up. Wow, he's so fun and interesting. Listen to. Don't forget, We Dig the Civil War headquarters. Zero discrimination on Facebook and YouTube. Girls Rock Metal Detecting on Facebook and YouTube. Ohio Relic Hunting on Facebook. Dirt Pirates Detecting on Facebook. Huntress Kimmy and Clodhopper Scott on YouTube. I want to say I appreciate you all. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good night.
Nocta Macro Detectors is the fastest growing manufacturer in the industry, and for good reason. Many detectorists, including Mike Hare, call us the most innovative, but we are so much more than that. We listen to and care about our customers. We also offer a wide range of detectors to fit all of your needs. Come check out all of our products today at www.noctadetectors.com. Detectors for everyone, everywhere, a lifetime.